There is a slight change in our schedule. Our planning minister was supposed to come at 11 a.m., but he will join us at 2:30 p.m. after the lunch. Shuko? Distinguished guests, diplomats, academicians, civil society members, members from the press and media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcoming you all to our second day of the conference, Bay of Bengal Conversation. First session of today is on regional energy connectivity in mitigating climate change in the Indo-Pacific region. For this, I'd like to welcome Ms. Vidita as the host of this session. Ms. Vidita, over to you.
Thank you, Nusrat. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, honorable members from the government, respected colleagues from USAID and representatives of the media, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning to you all. I am Musharat Vidita, currently leading communications at USAID's flagship clean energy project in Bangladesh called the Batch Project. I will be your host for today's session. During today's session, we will get the opportunity to get insights from experts and key stakeholders on how regional and Indo-Pacific cooperation in the energy sector can lead to a secure and sustainable energy future. To commence today's session, I would now like to invite on stage Mr. Abdul Qadir Al-Rahal, the Chief of Party of USAID Batch Project, to share his welcome remarks.
Thank you, Vidita. Assalamu alaikum. Chief guest Mahbubur Rahman, Chairman of the Bangladesh Power Development Board. I understand he will be joining us momentarily. Dr. Mohammed Khan, Economic Growth Officer for USAID. And then esteemed panelists here, and ladies and gentlemen, again, Assalamu alaikum. It's an honor to be with you this morning and to introduce to you the Bangladesh Advancing Development and Growth Through Energy, otherwise known as BADGE project. Our project seeks to increase the utilization of renewable energy and energy efficient technology diversify Bangladesh energy mix with sustainable and secure resources, and promote policies that attract private sector investment in alignment with the U.S. government theme of Clean Energy Asia, enhancing development and growth through clean energy. Boosting energy trade, regional energy trade, is one of the 5 project components, which also include promoting advanced energy technology, strengthening power utilities and infrastructure, attracting clean energy investment, and enhancing private sector development. We have some fact sheet and brochure about our project on the table outside. Please help yourself also to one of those that has information about the project. We are delighted to partner with the Center for Governance Studies in Dhaka, Bangladesh, to present to you today a session which includes a video presentation by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. The National Renewable Energy Laboratory, NREL, is transforming energy through research, development, commercialization, and deployment of renewable energy and energy efficiency technologies all over the world. The session also includes the presentation by the badge team and a panel discussion moderated by Mullah Amzad Hussain, the editor of the Renewed Energy and Power magazine. This moderator panel also includes representatives from the Power Division in Bangladesh, Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, USAID, the European Union, and the Asian Development Bank. We look forward to everyone's participation also in the panel discussion. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Mr. Abdul Qadir Al-Rahal, for your welcome remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, Bangladesh is at the forefront fighting against climate change, facing challenges such as rising sea levels, extreme weather events, or changing climate patterns. And during today's session, we will learn more about how we can mitigate it. Our session is called Regional Energy Connectivity in Mitigating Climate Change Impacts in the Indo-Pacific. Now, I would now like to welcome on stage Dr. Muhammad Khan, Director of Economic Growth Office at USAID Bangladesh, to share his remarks.
Thank you, Vidita. Chief guest, I understand he's on his way, Mr. Mahbubur Rahman, Chairman of Bangladesh Power Development Board. Distinguished colleagues, donor partners, and participants, dear panelists, good morning, assalamu alaikum, namaskar, and shubho shakal. USAID is pleased to host today's session titled Regional Energy Connectivity in Mitigating Climate Change Impacts in the Indo-Pacific at the Bay of Bengal Conversation 2023. This session supports the theme, the Indo-Pacific as a front line for climate action of the Bay of Bengal Conversation, and it is in alignment with the US government's theme of Clean Edge Asia, enhancing development and growth through clean energy badge. Today's session includes presentation on the latest renewable energy technologies and their applicability in the Indo-Pacific region, regional perspective on clean energy transition with a focus on Bangladesh, and a panel discussion featuring experts to deliberate on the cross-border renewable energy trading to mitigate climate change. Bangladesh relies heavily on fossil fuels, particularly natural gas and coal, to meet its growing energy demand The reliance on imported fossil fuels increases government subsidies to the power sector, reduces available foreign currency reserves, perpetuates climate change, and increases vulnerability. Regional trade offers real opportunities to reduce reliance on fossil fuels, increase reliability, and is economically preferred. Energy connectivity is crucial for continuing economic development of the Indo-Pacific region. Enhanced regional cooperation in the energy sector can bring numerous benefits by utilizing abundant renewable resources in the region. In addition, the private sector is poised to play an increasing importance role in the development of renewable energy solutions in the region. Today, you will hear how USAID, through several programs, has been actively involved in South Asia since 2000, focusing on introducing clean energy, improving energy access, reliability, sustainability, and of course, regional connectivity. USAID believes that collaborative efforts would lead to a more sustainable and secure energy future, contributing to a reduction in carbon emissions and meeting climate change commitments. I hope that the session today would stimulate active engagement of stakeholders in the Indo-Pacific region, and particularly in Bangladesh, to confront global concerns on climate actions. Thank you, and have a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Mohammad Khan. Ladies and gentlemen, energy is very closely linked to climate change, as it serves as both a driver and a solution. It is now the time to delve into the presentation segment of our program. We are now going to watch a video that has been prepared by NRL. The video is on offshore wind energy development, and the presenter is Mr. Patrick Duffy, offshore wind analyst at NREL. Bear with me while I play the video.
Hi, my name is Patrick Duffy, and I'm a wind energy analyst at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory in the U.S.
IT, can we please
I've
have
tried
the
to put
audio
together
louder?
a brief overview of
Thank
offshore wind energy technology and considerations for potential offshore wind development in Bangladesh. Thank you for inviting me to share. I hope it's helpful. So why pursue offshore wind energy? Offshore wind plants enable electricity generation near major load centers. They also allow for the development of higher quality wind resources. This is site specific, but winds tend to be stronger and more consistent offshore. Large-scale projects face fewer transportation and installation constraints compared with onshore wind development. And a pipeline of offshore wind projects can motivate investment in port and manufacturing facilities, which provides another option for diversifying the clean energy mix in land-constrained areas. Note that there are a different set of spatial planning considerations that apply to offshore wind than apply to other clean energy technologies. So how do wind turbines work? The rotor converts the kinetic energy in the wind to torque, or a rotational force, which is used to spin the generator that produces electricity. Multiple turbines are connected to a substation which collects and transmits the electrical power to the land-based grid through subsea cables. Offshore wind farms are growing in size beyond 1,000 megawatts. This is comparable to some coal, natural gas, or nuclear power plants. These maps show average modeled wind speeds offshore Bangladesh. The amount of electricity a wind turbine produces depends on the wind conditions where it's installed. And these figures show that the average wind speeds offshore tend to be higher than the wind speeds over land. More analysis is needed to determine if offshore wind energy could complement other clean electricity sources like land-based wind and solar. NREL is currently conducting a wind resource assessment in Bangladesh, and it's important to note that measurements can help validate predictions from computational models like the ones NREL is using. In addition to the average wind speed, it's also important to consider extreme events like tropical storms in the design of the turbines. Offshore wind development in other parts of Asia has led to the creation of typhoon-class wind turbines. These turbines are strengthened to withstand more extreme wind conditions which may arise during a tropical storm. They also shut down if the wind gets dangerously high to reduce the chance of damage. Understanding how storms interact with offshore wind turbines is still an active area of research, but it may be important for potential development offshore Bangladesh. Offshore wind turbines are some of the largest machines humans build. The figure on the left shows what a wind plant might look like in the year 2035 based on a survey of wind energy experts from around the world. The figure on the right compares the rated power output of prototypes and commercial wind turbines. Both of these graphics show that turbines are growing physically larger as well as more powerful. That's been made possible by advancements in material science and turbine control algorithms. And these larger turbines have helped to realize economies of scale and reduce projects' costs. But continued turbine growth may threaten to make existing factories, ports, and vessels obsolete. Offshore wind turbines are connected to the seabed via substructures which sit below the water. We distinguish between fixed bottom substructures, which are rigidly attached to the seabed, and floating substructures, which are connected to the seabed with mooring lines and anchors. Most offshore wind projects installed to date use fixed bottom substructure technology in water depths of around 60 meters or less. But some recent projects are going deeper and remaining cost effective. Floating substructure technology is at an earlier stage of development, but rapidly maturing, and holds promise for unlocking high-quality offshore wind resources in regions where fixed-bottom technology is not feasible. This figure shows a number of different substructure technologies, both fixed and floating. Water depth is an important factor in offshore wind energy development. The image on the right maps water depths offshore Bangladesh and shows that those waters are suitable for both fixed and floating substructure technologies. The yellow line represents a 60-meter water depth, which is the current limit for cost-effective development of using fixed-bottom substructures. The red line represents a depth of 1,300 meters, which is the current limit for floating technologies. Both of these limits are guidelines which could change as the technology evolves. Other factors also influence the choice of substructure technology. These include seabed geotechnical conditions, port conditions, and manufacturing constraints. A variety of specialized infrastructure and equipment is required to support offshore wind development. Ports are crucial for installing, operating, and maintaining, and eventually decommissioning offshore wind turbines. They need to be able to store and move large components weighing hundreds of metric tons. The figures on the right provide examples of the kinds of port and vessel infrastructure that have been used to support offshore wind projects in other parts of the world. In addition to port and vessel infrastructure, grid infrastructure is critical for delivering the power generated by offshore wind where it needs to go. Integrating renewable energy technologies like offshore wind can pose new challenges to the grid. Considering the onshore electrical infrastructure and substation capacity in areas like Cox's Bazar and Chittagong are important when accounting for potential upgrades to accommodate offshore wind generation. Here is a list of references used for this presentation. Thank you for listening. I hope this is helpful.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming on stage Dr. Alam Mondal, Deputy Chief of Party of USAID Batch, to showcase the keynote presentation on regional energy connectivity in mitigating climate change impacts in the Indo-Pacific with a regional view and a focus on Bangladesh. Dr. Alam Mondal. I am playing your slides. I hope. IT, can we please have the slides? Yes.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. This presentation is about energy activity, energy transition, and climate change. It's aligned with US government initiative. Clean Asia means enhancing development and growth through energy. So this presentation mainly I will brief the global, regional with focus on Bangladesh on renewable energy targets and climate change that mitigate climate change impact in the Indo-Pacific. So see the global energy overall scenario. So we know the energy is the main component for any socio-economic development. Currently, most of the energy demands are made by largely from fossil fuel. Fossil fuel means natural gas, coal, oil. So you see about 60%, more than 60% power generation still comes from fossil fuel. And fossil fuel reserves is also limited. If the current rate of consumption is continued, the coal will stay up to 118 years, gas up to 60 years, and oil about 42 years. And it is important to note that in the next 20 years, the expected expected installation capacity based on the projected demand would require the installed capacity that was installed in the 20th century. And also think about the GHG emissions. 0.2 degrees Celsius per degree decade is global warming. It is reported in many IPCC reports. So about more than 70% GHG emissions is related to energy activities, and over 41%, over 40% CO2 emission directly from power generation. So in the figure top, you see the world consumption. It's excluded. It is only included means the commercial energy, excluded traditional biomass. So it's mostly served by the oil. And good thing is that the declining chain of coal, the oil consumptions is about 49% to now about 42%. And the good thing is the renewable generation is increasing. Renewable share is what about 1%. By 2020, it is now is about 7%. And if the lower figure clearly shows for power generations, who is source giving the more, like coal is the number one, then natural gas, and then the hydro. So coal is 39% generation comes from coal-based power plant. So see the regional context, how we are doing the region. So about 60% generation again is come from fossil fuel. So although Nepal, Bhutan contributing significantly generation from hydropower, but still we are having like 60% coal-based generation. So and Nepal is already 98% hydropower-based generation, and Bhutan is 100%, and Bhutan is already the world first carbon neutral country. And net zero targets we have like by 2030 Maldives, and 2045, 2050, 2070 is Nepal, Sri Lanka and India. Net zero means what we are emitting or adding to the atmosphere, the same amount we need to remove from the atmosphere. That is the net zero target. And renewable energy target is, if you see by 2030, the East countries target is given. India is 500 gigawatt. So currently they have 173 gigawatt is including large hydro. Bangladesh is now is about 1 gigawatt, is targeting 60 gigawatt from renewable by 2030. So the overall it would be almost 600 gigawatt by 2030 in this region, the renewable based generation. Now go back to our like the Bangladesh energy scenario, how we are doing. So up to 2020, 22, total installation capacity is almost 23 gigawatt, and highest is almost we said 99.5% energy access we have, and contributing mostly from fossil fuel. If you see the figure, the bar chart, installed capacity 51% from natural gas, 28 or total 34% from liquid fuel, and then 8% imported, 1% hydro, and 1% renewable. So the generation, it looks like almost 90% comes from fossil-based power generations. Although we have a significant number of installation capacity, but we maximum demand meet is about 15 gigawatt. So look at the cost of generation and then distribution cost for power in Bangladesh. So average cost, generation cost or supply cost, we say almost 9 taka or 9 cent per unit. And average bulk sale price means BPDB is selling to the distribution utilities about 6.2 taka or 6 cents per unit. See, there is a significant gap between supply, generation cost and the bulk sale. So it is like 2.7 taka per unit is additional. These are the subsidy governments needs to pay. Per unit we are paying subsidy 2.7 taka. So and then at the same time, if you see the imported cost of the electricity is 6.12 taka per unit, and fossil fuel, especially HFO based power generation cost is around 20 taka per unit, and renewable generation cost still is high in Bangladesh, is about 12 to 15 taka per unit. So it clearly shows there is a good sign. The renewable is coming up. I will tell a little bit later how it's contributing for generating electricity in globally, and also for Bangladesh is useful. So see the Bangladesh, the renewable energy capacity target. So PSMP power system master plan is revisiting, is called 2016, is published in 2018. Its target is about 8 gigawatt or 8,000 megawatt by 2041. This is the target. Actual capacity right now is 1100 or 1200 megawatt, is including large hydro is one, we have 230 megawatt, including solar home system. Basically, large utility scale solar wind generation, solar power generation is about 600 megawatt in Bangladesh. So also Mujib Climate Prosperity Plan shows the target is about 100% by 2050 and 40% by 2040. I will focus more on the drivers. This renewable is important, no doubt about it. Renewable can contribute significantly to mitigate GHG emission, no doubt about it. Renewable can contribute to improve the energy security, no doubt about it. So what are the main drivers need to keep in mind? So energy security, the natural gas is the main source of electricity generation, and it is consumed by other sector as well. So, and based on the reserves, natural gas cannot serve for power generation in the long term. So this can be driver we can take positively to promote renewable based generation. So, and also need to minimize the import dependency. This is another driver need to be in mind. And optional this is need to focus on optimum use of indigenous resources. So renewable is indigenous resources. We have to maximize use them to get their benefit. So NDC target, nationally determined contributions. So this is another driving force to promote renewable energy technologies. And government visions clearly, Prime Minister's mention is to COP26 is like 40% renewable based generation by 2041. So another driver is potential of renewable energy. It's really significant potential we have in Bangladesh, over 150 gigawatt solar potential, and endless study shows over 30 gigawatt onshore wind potential. If you add offshore wind, the potential is significantly higher. So let's go to the cost of renewables. Cost of renewables is significantly decreased in last decades. Is currently based on the many projects is the range between levelized cost of electricity from renewables varies from 3 taka to 4 taka, basically 3 cents to 4 cents for the solar PV, and wind 3 cents to 5 cents. So the really latest the latest lowest renewable based generation cost is 0.28 cent per unit. So the cost is competitive with conventional fuel. There is no doubt about it. So independent power producers, so they are interested. So there are many, you know, like 15 years back, private generation was in Bangladesh less than 5%. Now private generation companies is contributing about 45% per generation. USAID BRAS project mainly focusing or targeting to have a transition on private sectors generation from fossil-based power generation to renewable-based power generation. So independent power producers are ready. So need a level playing field to get them in and promote the renewable energy technologies. So there are many challenges. There are no doubt. So there is many challenges for renewable energy development. Policy and government commitment. So important is the government commitment. Lack of clear policy and regulations and limited incentives, lack of commitment. So main lacking is like the misalignment between target and the implementation plan. We have many targets, we don't have basically mismatch with the target and the implementation plan. And weak institutional capacity, still lack of capacity and also mindset. So renewable cannot contribute, so need to come up with overcome these challenges. And non-standard procurement, this is important. USAID BAS project is working to ensure based value transparent procurement, renewable energy procurement. Still, most of the procurement is having solicited procurement, so not unsolicited, not solicited. So that's the one of the main challenges. Limited land availability, there is no debate about the land availability, land constraint, but still unused land, river bank, government land, floating solar, agrivoltaic, rooftop, there are many ways we can generate more. So there are significant potential, as I said in my last slide. So still we can generate more than 150 gigawatt. And limited data is not available like the private sector, the data transparency, available data is limited. And also the main thing is the grid. We need a stable grid because renewable energy generation is variable. So need a stable generation, the grid for renewable. So these are the challenges we need to overcome to get our target. So now we'll focus on the regional connectivity, the cross-border electricity trade, because if they mention it, this is the cheapest way. Now we see like 6 taka per unit, the imported cost. We are not talking about the only to import, but we are talking about to import and export to have a market where we can buy and sell electricity from that market. So government targets by 2041 about 9 gigawatt or 9,000 megawatt to be imported. So currently importing about 2,600 megawatt. So currently importing, they are using 3 routes basically. One is Kumilla, Tripura, another route is Bharamara, Baharampur, another route is Rahanpur and Jharkhand. So 3 current routes using to import the electricity. So Bangladesh main target is to having like the participation in day-ahead market. Day-ahead market is a physical market, is like a stock exchange, stock market. 24 hours before, you can confirm your buy and sell, what is the demand, what you want to buy. So you have negotiation, can come with a consensus, and you will confirm your demand or supply one day before. So government is interested to participate in the day-ahead market. Import hydropower from Nepal, this is ongoing. By 2024, by next year, we will have 40 megawatt additional, and by 2030, so 500 megawatt hydropower from Nepal. Also joint investment in Nepal, India, Bangladesh on discussion to invest in Nepal to import electricity from Nepal, similar with the Bhutan. So requirements for Bangladesh to enhance the cross-border electricity trade. So what are the primary requirements? And also better to mention here that Nepal and Bhutan already in the market, on the day-ahead market, but Bangladesh is not yet. So this is important to enroll first with the day-ahead market. What are the requirements? So we need clear-cut favorable policy and regulations, regulatory frameworks to for this participation of regional market. And transmission network, this is important. We need a synchronized grid, like grid to be synchronized with India and Bangladesh. The same, if it is synchronized, then easy to import or export or to trade electricity in this from this market. And sizable financial investment is required for the infrastructure and grid infrastructure. And establish cooperation and trust among regional countries. This is very important. We need to build up trust each other. And then regional also need commitments, and then it is easier to have the market, development of the market. And also need to promote regional projects that will help to build trust among the countries. And capacity development initiative, that's basically we need the capacity development for institution and also human capacity for cross-border electricity trade. So government vision, so if you see the vision of the government, so it is upcoming basically integrated energy and power master plan will come like this way. So where we are now, like 2021 is middle income countries, developing country status we are expecting by 2030, and total capacity would be 40 gigawatt, and by 2041 is a developed country capacity would be 60 gigawatt, and by 2050 we will start clean energy region. So the electricity generation up to 40% clean energy by, sorry, it is from by 2041. So USAID, what USAID is doing, there are, as Dr. Mohammad Khan already mentioned, there are many initiatives that align with Clean Asia is. So Bangladesh Advancing Development and Growth Through Energy BAS, one of the projects is running in Bangladesh, facilitating cross-border renewable energy efficiency, energy procurement, so all about the capacity development sort of things. And South Asia Regional Energy Partnerships is SAREP, based in India, but working for this region. Sri Lanka Energy Program, Urja Nepal Program, USAID Vietnam Low Emission Energy Program, and also USAID Vietnam Urban Energy Security, USAID Southeast Asia Smart Power Program is all about in the Indo-Pacific region. So encouraging things, what are the good things? As I mentioned, the private sector, they are interested to participate, promote the renewable energy technology, also participate cross-border electricity trade. So this, but they are looking for the transparency, predictability, and clear rules of law to participate in the market. And adequate infrastructure should be ready to start this market. And private sector interested to develop regional projects. Actually, there are many private sector now ready to invest in India or Nepal to import electricity from there. USAID also, recent consultations show an increase of private sector participation in cross-border electricity. USAID also developing different kind of tool like corporate power purchase agreement. So corporate power purchase agreements, it will help private sector to sell the electricity directly to the consumer. So this type of tool USAID is BAS project is developing in collaboration with SAREP and also other US organizations. The corporate power purchase along direct renewable, as I said, renewable purchase by end user, national and cross-border energy power agreements. So we are developing this type of PPA, how it should be, and that would help to get in the market and cross-border electricity trade market. So USAID, what is contributed specifically to the cross-border electricity trade? So we already developed a roadmap that clearly shows next steps to enroll the regional market or day-ahead market. So a short-term action is given, participation in the power exchange by following designation authority. The designation authority is the Central Energy Regulatory India, need to be enrolled there to get it approved, then we can be a member of the market. So there in the roadmap it is clearly given 3 stages, like what should do immediately, what is the second stage, what would be the third stage. The first stage is all about the participation of the day-ahead market. So we need to confirm an Indian trader and then agreement with the settlement agency and finally with the designated authority. And second stage is, so we need a power exchange approval or clearance to become a member of PX. PX means power exchange through the trader. And the third stage, if I say in a simple word, it would be the execution, and to have a power exchange sale in BPDB or in Bangladesh, that will confirm the market, the negotiation, the agreement, all things. So I will stop here. I hope it gives little bit idea about the renewable energy, the development target, and cross-border electricity trade, the opportunities and what are the challenges, and how the initiative to help promote, basically to improve energy security and to mitigate GHG emissions. So that's the issue we try to explain here. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Alam. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a privilege to welcome our honorable chief guest, Mr. Mahbubur Rahman, Chairman of Bangladesh Power Development Board, to share a few words with us.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. I am delighted to stand before you today at this significant gathering to discuss the crucial topic regional energy connectivity in mitigating climate change impacts in the Indo-Pacific. I want to express my heartfelt gratitude to USAID and BES for their dedication to addressing one of the most pressing issues at this time. The world is now moving forward to renewable energy solution for green energy transition and to get rid of dependency on fossil fuels. The increasing contribution of renewable energy-based power generation, particularly from wind and solar, is a significant step towards achieving a more sustainable future. It's also encouraging to see the inclusion of hydrogen-based power generation, which can play a vital role in decarbonizing various sectors such as transportation and industrial processes. IEA study, Net Zero Scenarios, shows that contribution of renewable energy-based power generation will be 69% by 2030 and 81% by 2050, and mostly from wind and solar. Hydrogen-based power generation share will be 1% by 2030 and 6% by 2050. So regional connectivity is also of the utmost importance for the efficient and effective extraction and utilization of renewable energy. Currently, Bangladesh has 460 megawatt of installed solar capacity on grid, and an additional 450 megawatt is produced from off-grid solar systems, making up around 2% of the country's overall grid energy mix. Government of Bangladesh has the target up to 40% from clean energy by 2041. Solar power plants will play a pivotal role in achieving these targets. Along with wind and biomass potential, we have very small potential for biomass, mainly solar and wind. And it will pave the way for sustainable energy system in future of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is swiftly advancing towards its clean energy aspirations, harnessing a collaborative spirit with neighboring countries to meet its targets. At present, we are importing 2,656 megawatt of power from India. That has already been incorporated in our grid system through bilateral cooperation. However, the horizon extends beyond, with plans underway to facilitate the import of 40 megawatt power from Nepal. This will be the first in its kind of involving 3 countries in this sub-region. And we are very much delighted to work with this promising venture that is poised to materialize with the imminent signing of a power supply agreement. We are looking ahead to sign 500 megawatt of power from GMR Upper Karnali hydropower project in Nepal. This will also be the second milestone in involving 3 countries as a sub-regional power cooperation. These initiatives represent a substantial stride towards augmenting the clean energy share in this region. According to our draft Integrated Energy Power Master Plan, a total of 15,000 megawatt will be imported from neighboring countries through cross-border electricity trade by 2050. And that will account for about 15% of the total generation capacity. In the Bay of Bengal region, a vision of greater connectivity and energy resilience is unfolding, which consequently needs the development of a regional power market. Several frameworks have been proposed under BIMSTEC, BBIN, SASEC, SARC, for regional cooperation and energy exchange. BPDB already we are in a process of participating day-ahead market of Indian power exchange very soon. Moreover, plans are underway to import power from India on an round-the-clock basis that ensures both renewable energy shares at low cost as well as our grid system stability and reliability. The energy outlook for the Indo-Pacific region in 2050 is dependent mainly on the choice of energy technologies. The technologies that gain dominance will not only reshape regional energy demand but also influence mineral and fuel requirements. The energy system of 2050 is likely to be a hybrid, combining traditional and green technologies with a larger role of renewables. So this session, I hope already several technical and technological sessions already presented. So I wish a successful of this session. Thanks to you all and thanks to the organizer for inviting me. Thanks to all.
Thank you, Mr. Mahbubur Rahman, for your insightful thoughts. Distinguished guests, we are now moving into an engaging and insightful panel discussion on the topic cross-border energy trading to mitigate climate change in the Indo-Pacific region. Our esteemed panel will be moderated by Mr. Molla Amjad Hussain, the editor of Energy and Power magazine. Can we please have him on stage? Our moderator. Joining us as panelists, Mr. Nirod Mondol, Joint Secretary of Power Division, Dr. Ijaz Hussain, Professor of the Chemical Engineering Department at Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, Mr. Shayan Shafi, Energy Team Leader at USAID Bangladesh, Ms. Kiara Vidusi, Program Manager of Energy Investment Grants and Blended Finance from the delegation of the European Union to Bangladesh, and Ms. Nazmun Nahar, Senior Project Officer Energy at the Asian Development Bank. We also have Mr. Abdul Qadir Al-Rahati, USAID badge in the panel. Over to you, Mr. Molla Amjad Hussain, for moderating the panel discussion session.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Inviting all to the regional energy connectivity in mitigating climate change impact in the Indo-Pacific region. Actually, we have a designated speaker today and we have time limitations. So, you all know the actual situation of Bangladesh energy sector and renewable energy contribution, as well as the Bangladesh planning for mitigating the climate change things and meeting the NDC target, reducing carbon emission. And all we know that our Prime Minister is very keen to low carbon development. In this line, Bangladesh take a lot of initiatives to enhancing non-carbonized power generation. One of step is the Rupur nuclear power plant is almost in the final stage, as well as Bangladesh formulating policy to generate grid connected solar, and one study funded by ADB is on the final stage to generate power from wind in deep offshore. And also, our chairman already informed Bangladesh now work with the regional country to import 24/7 renewable energy through cross-border trade. And hope we get some insight. First, I like to invite Mr. Abdul Qadir Lahar to give us some thoughts on this regards, how BASE can help Bangladesh to enhance the regional cooperation on renewable energy, and especially renewable energy, as well as our regulatory framework to do the things with the regional country. Mr. Abdul Qadir.
Thank you, Mr. Hussain.
And your time is 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. I think what I'd like to do is maybe talk about the role, the critical role of the private sector in the development of the of renewable energy regional with a regional aspect. As you know, the private sector role is critical in two ways: on the demand side and on the supply side. And now I want to acknowledge the presence of the private sector in this room here with us today. I see a lot of our colleagues from the private sector interested in this subject. So, if I may start on the demand side, as we all know, there's a lot of pressure on the private sector to engage in net zero solutions for their product and services. You read today all the time about companies like, large companies like Google and Nike and H&M, who probably is here today, on their goals of procuring renewable energy for their services. And a lot of these large international companies have set zero goals and are driving the development of renewable energy, not only in the Indo-Pacific region, specifically in the Indo-Pacific region, but also all over the world. So that is the role for the private sector on the demand side. On the supply side, obviously the private sector wants to supply the renewable energy to both, the corporate customers and also to the, local grid. USAID, through the batch program, is really instrumental in, at least in Bangladesh and the region, in supporting the role of private sector through the development, for example, of corporate power purchase agreement, which are agreements that allow the private sector customers to buy directly from private sector generators of clean energy. So not only that, but also through the development of cross-border PPA for renewable energy. The batch program is providing best practice example how these initiatives are done in many other countries. So, I will emphasize the importance of the role of the private sector in renewable energy development, both on the demand side and on the supply side of the equation. Thank you.
Could you please highlight some things that Mr. Alom mentioned in his presentation on the power purchase agreement, especially on renewable energy for corporate?
Yes, for sure. So through the USAID-funded batch program, we are focusing on the development of two instruments that help with renewable energy. The first one is the corporate power purchase agreement, again, which include in it some clauses, important clauses that allow the private sector to claim, the carbon credit needed for their contribution to clean energy for their customer base, and also through the corporate through power purchase agreement cross-border between government, also that take into advantage renewable energy. importing renewable energy is a little different than just importing any energy. And, you know, I would just give you one example. You know, if an energy is produced in a neighbor country as imported to another country, you know, a lot of the questions would be who take credit for the renewable energy. Is it the producing country? Is it the consumer? There are a lot of models and a lot of business best practice models that we are introducing also as template and examples to satisfy this equation, while at the same time remain compliant with the Paris Agreement in that there will be no double counting of renewable energy, you know, produced or consumed. So those are the two areas we're looking at. Thank you, Mr. Hussain.
Thank you so much for your kind words. And now I like to request Mr. Sayan Shafi, team leader, energy team of USAID. We all know the USAID actually key player in this region to initiate the energy cooperation things from middle of the 90s, and many programs going on, and still they are supporting Bangladesh as well as the regional country to make the things reality and energy cooperation. Mr. Sayan Shafi, your time also in 5 minutes, and it will be very nice if you can put some insight regarding USAID activities in development and enhancement of the regional electricity trade with the project almost every country in the Indo-Pacific region. What are the same of the lesson learned that the applicable enhance the regional electricity trade?
Thank you very much. So, yes, it is true that USAID has been working in the regional energy space for a long time. To be precise, we started doing it in the early 2000. And we started doing it through a program for this region. We started doing this with a program that is called the South Asia Regional Integration, the SARI program that many of us, of you are also aware. The South Asia Regional Energy Integration Program was introduced in 2000, and then it had 4 phases. Each of the phases were for 5 years. So in 2020, the SARI program ended, but at the same time now we are operating from 2021. There is a new program called the South Asia Regional Energy Partnership, the SAREP program that is still going on. And the SAREP program and the badge program that Mr. Abdul Qadir here is the chief of party for that program. The badge program is a bilateral, USAID's bilateral program in Bangladesh, and the SAREP program is the regional energy program in India. So both of these programs have a common goal, which is to work on regional energy cooperation. So we have been doing that, and we have seen a lot of changes in terms of the capacity building of the stakeholders. The reason why I am sitting in a panel talking about regional energy cooperation twice in the last 2 months is an indicator as to how the thematic area has evolved over the last couple of decades. When we started talking about regional energy cooperation in 2000, we didn't have many people to listen to us. And similarly, we have seen how positively the mindsets and the learning of these countries, the representatives of these countries have also changed. So in the last 10 years, if you look at the last 10 years versus the 23 years horizon, you would see a significant change in terms of people getting more learned about the sector, people trying to ask the right questions, give everyone the challenging but the real questions in terms of what needs to be done for the countries to collaborate and to actually trade power. So a lot of positive change has already happened, and Bangladesh is no exception. As the respected chairman of Bangladesh Power Development Board mentioned, the government of Bangladesh is also thinking about participating in the Indian Power Exchange, the day-ahead market, and also thinking long-term in terms of renewable, in terms of trading of power between countries. And when I say trade of power, it is not only taking power from outside, we are also planning to export power through the electricity grid. So this is a learning, I think, that has evolved over the several years, and this is also something that is not only technical. I think many of us are here who are already aware about the subject matter to be not to be only a technical issue, but also it's actually a geopolitical issue where there are many other concerns which are embedded to this concept. But in reality, I think that the sector has shifted in a very positive fashion, and we now also have many foreign friends, our donor community, who are also very much interested to do the same, to push the agenda of cross-border electricity trade for Bangladesh and in the region. And USAID having worked in this sector not only in the South Asia region but also the Central Asia region, Southeast Asia region, Central America region, and also the Africa region. And we are trying our best to have more peer exchange programs, capacity building exercise for our government and our private sector stakeholders, so that people can go and learn and see how these actually are implemented. We conducted studies tours to South Africa, the Southern African Power Pool in Zimbabwe. We visited the coordination center. There were people from the government of Bangladesh who also participated. We also brought a team from the government of Bangladesh to India several times. So we are trying our best to make this a very known segment, because we have seen that it is not only US government's interest to advance energy, clean energy through regional energy cooperation in Bangladesh, it is also the country's and the region's priority as well. Thank you.
So much. I think you already know the Bangladesh government, especially through Power Development Board, they already has taken step to go for the real power trading between Bangladesh, India, Nepal and Bhutan, and already they started discussion with the Nepal to sell additional power in the winter season this time, and Bangladesh power demand is a little low over there. Now I request former Dean of BUET, Professor Ijaz Hussain. Professor Ijaz Hussain, energy expert as well as climate change expert, and he do a lot of work for IPCC as well as the preparing for our NDC. I like to request you to give us some insight regarding how the cross-border renewable energy, clean energy project be structured to ensure the qualitable access, benefit sharing, cooperation among Indo-Pacific country, especially on the SAARC, especially SAARC and BBIN.
Thank you very much, Mullah Amjad. I'm actually delighted to be here to speak in front of all of you on this very important topic. I've been working in energy kind of all my career, and my actual normal career has ended, but I'm still continuing to work in this, especially the new idea of this net zero and decarbonization. That is my thing. Before I begin, I like to mention that I don't know how Bangladesh, we fell so far behind in renewable energy. Like the chairman said, 500 megawatt grid-tied solar out of nearly 25,000 megawatt of power plants. That's just 2%, just 2%. So, I mean, we actually, I mean, despite all the efforts that you said that USAID and all have been helping Bangladesh from 2000, we really haven't done very much. I don't know what happened. Why? I mean, when you look at India, it's one of the
hugely success stories in terms of setting up renewable energy, in terms of solar power plants. And just next door, and we are talking about so much cooperation, but we didn't learn from them. This is the most amazing thing to me, that India is now a showcase in terms of solar energy. They have so much solar energy now that they can't use it. They actually can't use it because, you know, using solar energy, apart from the morning hours, that 4.5 hours or 5 hours or 6 hours, is very expensive because you have to put it in a battery and use it. So they have so much energy, so they have gone into the hydrogen program, which is another form of storage. So I might get into it if there is time. But you know, there is also a lot of good solar renewable energy right in Nepal and Bhutan. Okay? Now, why didn't we get this earlier on in Bangladesh? Well, there are several factors here. One is that earlier, electricity was so cheap in Bangladesh because we had a lot of natural gas, cheap natural gas, that whenever we went to negotiate for bringing electricity from Nepal and Bhutan, I mean, we found that, you know, we can generate electricity in Bangladesh much cheaper. So why? So every time we fail. But by the time we were ready, right now it's very expensive, electricity in Bangladesh, extremely expensive, because we have to import these fuels. Now it's cheaper, but now we are facing other problems. Only recently that we are noticing that India has opened up. I've been working in this field, and I've gone to India several times, Delhi. I've talked to their government officials, talked to many people.
Professor, could you please give your thoughts on the future project?
That's what I'm saying. Technically, everything is possible, but is the three-way interaction between India actually blocked the electricity coming to Bangladesh. It is only recently the 40 megawatt that is a tripartite, because you know that the chicken neck and all those kind of problems. So that's why we could not. So the main problem is technical. The other problem is that who will build this very expensive hydroelectricity power plant in Bhutan and Nepal? They don't have the money. And India has never allowed Bangladesh to go directly and invest there. So it was always have to be third party. So it was always that India had to build the power plant and they agreed to give us some. So we have to overcome this kind of problem, and India has, what I'm saying is that India has opened up recently, and it's the thing. The other problem in India is that hydroelectricity is actually much as a form of renewable energy in India is much more expensive now than solar. So they have a problem. Actually, India itself has a lot of renewable energy potential, hydro potential in their own northeast. But they are not developing those. They are not developing those because it's when you talk about renewable energy, it's for them is solar. So right now for Bangladesh is that bringing electricity from Nepal and Bhutan is always extremely beneficial. So, you know, they have to work out a way of getting this electricity. And I like the idea that in the winter time, when the water level is very low for the hydropower, we can export our, well, unfortunately, if we export something, it will be fossil electricity, but at least there will be trade possibility over there in this regard. So, you know, we always talk about technology.
Please mind your time.
Yes, we always talk about technology, but unfortunately, it's the political economy which we ignore, and it's the political economy that prevents these kind of transfers and cooperation. But I am very hopeful that since solar electricity is very cheap, when hydrogen production becomes very affordable, that we will be able to bring hydrogen from India to power our thing. I happen to be a believer in hydrogen and ammonia rather than battery. I really believe battery is very resource hungry, and actually the battery disposal and other things are very difficult. So I don't know which technology will win in the long run, but we will have to be aware of all the technologies and choose the right one. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ijaz. Now I'm happy to invite Ms. Chair Vidushi, Program Manager, Energy Investment Grant Delegation, European Delegation to Bangladesh. Ms. Chair. One question to you. We all know the European electricity grid is the model of regional electricity trade and uninterrupted transmission. Is the UE model applicable to Indo-Pacific region for the same purpose?
Thank you. Thank you for your question, and thanks a lot for having me here, especially to USAID Batch Project. Although the journey is still ongoing, indeed the EU has made significant progress in terms of the creation of an integrated and liberalized power market. Currently, Europe has an internal common electricity market comprising 35 countries, so this goes beyond the EU member states only, where there are different types of mechanisms through which electricity can be traded, maybe long-term contracts of 20 years or a day-ahead market, intraday market. Also, and I think this is particularly of interest for and relevance for other regions in the world, including South Asia, the EU has gained a lot of experience when it comes to ensuring trust in negotiations for cross-border connectivity projects or electricity trade between bigger and smaller countries, richer and poorer, technologically more advanced and less advanced countries, as well as the establishment of some well-working methodologies for calculation of cost and benefits for both sides. And also there are some institutional setups and structures, like for example ACER, which is the EU agency for the cooperation of energy regulators, or ENTSO-E, which is the European Association for the Cooperation of Transmission System Operators for Electricity, and others. Now, going back to your question very quickly on whether a similar system could be replicated to other regions in the world, like the Indo-Pacific, my answer would be yes, of course. But the point is when and at which conditions this can happen, because of course there are certain prerequisites that would allow a region to be able to scale up electricity trade, and down the line also ultimately the creation of a power market. And I think these points, these prerequisites have been already mentioned by some of the previous co-panelists, and also the very good presentation we had, we listened early this morning. But in my opinion, they could be basically summarized into five points. First, a strong political will, which ensures the commitment from the high-level political level. That's fundamental. Secondly, of course, they all say that electricity knows no border, but we know, in fact, that there are borders between sovereign countries, intra-regional, of course, and therefore what is needed is a dedicated and harmonized framework for legal, policy, regulatory, and technical point of view. So that's, of course, fundamental. Thirdly, the capacity, which is not only the generation capacity, but especially the transmission capacity. Fourth point would be, of course, in order to be able to trade, the right mechanism for commercial transactions intra-regionally. And fifth, something that was also mentioned earlier, the investments. And here the key players should be both private sector and financial institutions in order to ensure that the infrastructure is being set up. if I'm allowed one very short last point, I just want to say that we do not start from a blank page. On the contrary, and here I'd like to praise USAID Batch Project and SAREP and also all the other partners that already initiated like very ambitious and relevant processes here, including ADB, World Bank. So it will be fundamental to build up on what has been already created so far. The EU is also going to initiate a technical assistance project at the regional level for energy connectivity, so looking forward to cooperate. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, for your input. Especially, you mentioned 5 points for the political commitment and legal and regulatory framework integration is very important. But nowadays, the region mentally ready to exchange power, and 15 years back, it's a big challenge for Bangladesh, but now it's reality. We are importing power from India almost almost 2.6 gigawatt right now. So I move to our last speaker, Ms. Nazmun Nahar, a Senior Project Officer, Energy, Asian Development Bank. I like to request you how ADB, help Bangladesh to identify the renewable energy resource, especially the wind. Could you please kindly explain the latest step on the wind development and ADB support to Bangladesh?
Thank you, Amjad Bhai, and thanks to USAID Batch for having me here today. So the renewable energy and wind resource assessment, ADB has ADB through its TA loan financing to power division is currently conducting a pre and detailed feasibility study for offshore wind resource assessment in around 26 blocks along 200 nautical miles into the Bay of Bengal. And through this study, the first stage of the report is now available. It identifies that there are 17 near shore and 14 offshore locations where wind specific studies can be taken for offshore and near shore wind turbine and project development. And compared to the last assessment in land-based wind mapping and detailed feasibility studies that was conducted under the same TA loan in 2020, we found that there the wind resource, the wind speed was relatively lower, less than 3 meters per second. But in the offshore and nearshore area, especially in the Matarbari and Maheshkhali region, the wind resources atlas shows that it is more than 6.5 to 7 meters per second. That's promising speed, at least at 20 meter height. And we have seen from the morning presentation made by NREL, there are different type of floating and bolted types of platforms. So based on these, in the recommendation, preliminary recommendation shows that 300 megawatt up to 13.6 gigawatt of different capacities wind turbines are possible in the area of Bay of Bengal. And for that, some immediate steps are also suggested, like the strengthening of the substation and power evacuation infrastructure, especially in the Mireshorai, Maheshkhali, as well as in the Sundarban regions. So those are some low-hanging opportunities that the development partners and the DP communities that can immediately undertake, because we have not seen into this earlier. Earlier, our efforts were limited to onshore and land-based solar and wind resource development, and this is the time in the IEPMP, there is a target of 5 gigawatt near shore and 15 gigawatt offshore renewable and offshore wind development by 2041. So based on the IEPMP, we can start working on the transmission and power evacuation development immediately.
I have just One supplementary question, and we know ADB is supporting Bangladesh to develop their interconnection. And do you have any future project to support Bangladesh or in this regional country to trading 24/7 renewable energy?
Thank you. That's a very important question and I'm happy to answer it. Yes, the first and second interconnection projects in Varamara, the 500 and 1000 megawatt back in 2010 and 2012 was financed by ADB. That was a very different time. And at that time, under this Druto Vidyut Ain, the Speedy Electricity Act, that enabled many flexibility. And if I recall it correctly, the rate of PPA was 5.5 Dhaka per kilowatt hour rate. So the situation has changed a lot, and right now the IEPMP has a target of 9,000 megawatt power import by 2041. So ADB and other development partners all have revised their energy policies for full alignment with Paris Agreement. ADB's energy policy was revised in 2021. So our pipeline and the country partnership strategy says that we are fully committed towards regional grid development. However, the political intent, as the other panelists rightly identified, the need has to come from the ground. So Nepal is ready, Bhutan is ready, Bangladesh is also more than ready. Now it is onto the political will and how the request comes.
Thank you so much. Actually, we are running shortage of time already. We finished our allocated time, but it's a nice discussion. But discussion on the energy connectivity, especially the regional energy connectivity, is a huge landscape. Actually, we achieve lots, but lot of things to do in future, especially in energy transition. Bangladesh try to focus, reduce their carbon emission for power generation around 7%. But on own resource, Bangladesh will be not able to fulfill their commitment to reduce carbon emission by own and other helps 21% by 2030. So we need to do some greater cooperation on this energy transition, especially the energy cooperation on renewable fields that can help Bangladesh to enhance their non-carbonized electricity generation. And you know, Bangladesh had a target to go enhance as development countries by 2041. So we need lot of energy. We need electricity, we need primary energy, and right now Bangladesh importing almost 60% of its energy, and due to volatile market, Bangladesh now passing very bad time on the big pressure on the foreign currency and meeting the import bill. So hope in near future Bangladesh can replace primary energy, especially coal, fuel, gas, other to the cross-border renewable energy. Thank you all, and thank you CGS and USAID to inviting me here. Thank you, guest.
Thank you to all the speakers of this session. Now I would like to request all the members of the batch for a formal photo, please.
Requesting Shayan Bhai, Energy Team Leader, to share his vote of thanks. Shayan Bhai, just a few words before we gather for the group photo.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vidita. Once again, Assalamu alaikum. I'll be very quick. First of all, I'd like to thank our chief guest, Honorable Chairman of Bangladesh Power Development Board, Mr. Mahabur Rahman sir. Thank you very much for coming here and gracing this occasion. My thanks to my co-panelists and the moderator who are here at the panel discussion. Thanks again for very enlightening discussions. And I always feel that discussion is never ending, which is good and bad in many ways. But thanks for the great discussion. I would also like to thank Patrick Duffy from NREL, who has prepared a 10-minute presentation for Bangladesh to discuss about offshore wind energy possibilities. We have partnership with US NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab, and that's why we were able to get Patrick to present virtually today. And also my thanks to the CGS colleagues for organizing this very, very grand gathering of stakeholders in this topic. Thank you very much. My thanks to the badge team for putting their efforts together and pulling up this wonderful session today. And finally, lastly, and not least, the August gathering, the distinguished guests here who has taken time in this morning to be here with us and listen to us and hear our thoughts. With the time limitation, we were not able to provide the Q&A session, but I think we'll be here. Can we take one or two questions? The organizers are not, maybe we can take it offline. If it is with me, I'll be very happy. But again, thanks for your presence, and we would invite you to the lunch segment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shan Bhai. Thank you, everyone. Requesting everyone to gather on stage for a group photo. The panelists, speakers, and badge team. Badge team, can we please have you on stage for a group photo? Dr. Alam, we also need you on stage for the group photo. Yeah. Yes. We need Mr. Mahbubur Rahman, Chairman of BPDB, on stage. Dr. Muhammad Khan. Sure. একটু গাইড করেন কোথায় দাঁড়ালে বেস্ট ফটো আসবে 2 লাইনে হবে কোথায় পিছে দাঁড়ায় Thank you, everyone. This is the end of today's USAID session. Thanks to the organizers, participants, panelists, moderator. Thank you, everyone, for your patience and being with us. Goodbye.
Requesting everyone to take your seats, please, so that we can start our session.
Are we waiting for anyone? Otherwise, should we start? Mr. Rahman, Mr. Zillur Rahman, should we go ahead? Okay, thank you so much. Once again, very good afternoon and Assalamu alaikum to everyone. And today, for rest of the few minutes before we are standing between discussion on a very important topic though, and the lunch. So we are very mindful of it, not to bore anyone, but intrigue or have a very intriguing discussion with regard to dollar dominance and the BRICS, the erstwhile getting or known to be or deemed to be getting stronger with the inclusion of the few new members, the Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa, and now few others in the team. So, and ladies and gentlemen, you would be seeing every now and then, especially even in Bangladesh newspapers also, some news translated into Bengali that yes, how BRICS is trying to elbow out the dollar dominance, or how China is contemplating to make a more stronger renminbi, and also India promoting and championing trade in Indian rupee, and of course China has been always there trying to elbow out the dollar dominance and seeing or ensuring more trade in renminbi and other BRICS member country currencies. Over the last few years, the BRICS, as I have already mentioned, group of nations has become an increasingly important bloc in the global economic and political landscape. As the countries in BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa have continued to dominate global trade flows, the question of their influence versus the influence of the G7, known to be the developed country bloc, is a natural point of contention. The recent move by BRICS to announce an expansion in its membership to include Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Argentina, Iran, and Ethiopia were unveiling the de-dollarization plan over the next 3 years. At least there has been a lot of discussion, as we have seen happening in South Africa and erstwhile in China and other places also. It is expected to have profound economic and political implications, and I aim to discuss many of these implications now, more importantly, with the esteemed panel lined up here who represents each of their competence and excellence to discuss and delve into the matters of dollarization as well as BRICS, emerging BRICS power. Over the USD 17 billion of sold by China, Brazil, Saudi Arabia and India in the last month, which is part of a general trend of BRICS nations reducing their treasury holdings. China over the last decade has unloaded over US$ 500 billion. This is a key part of the move to increase the number of transactions in local currencies within member countries, which despite the long-term goal of de-dollarization has grown very slowly. The BRICS Bank, which holds 70% of its funds in US dollar, is also focusing on reducing its USD holdings, which is an important move to reduce the dependence on dollars. What could be the implications be for global trade flows? For those countries which currently struggle to build up their USD holdings, it represents an opportunity to trade in a group of currencies which may be more accessible to them, the member countries or the BRICS countries. This can potentially help developing nations who can also take loans in non-US dollar currencies, enhancing their relationship with the larger BRIC nations or BRICS nations. This is also a direct challenge to the G7 countries who have propped up the dollar and due to their past dominance of global trade flows made the US dollar the only resort for countries. If the BRICS is united in its approach, the US dollar's ubiquity may be in trouble, but therein lies the crucial weakness of the BRICS bloc, I guess. Much of the geopolitics also I have seen from the agenda before discussed here in this August gathering, their diversity of objectives. The BRICS bloc has never been a united group of countries which work closely towards common economic goals. Currently, Russia and China see eye to eye in their focus on supplementing the US dollar. However, de-dollarization is not necessarily a priority for India. Their relationship with the USA is important for their growth as they serve as crucial IT-backed support for US or large US firms. They also have significant border tensions with China and de-dollarization, which will inevitably magnify Chinese influence globally, means India is unlikely to support China and ultimately also Russia's policies. This division was also clear in the recent decision to expand the BRICS bloc as certain countries backed by China were vetoed by India ultimately. With Argentina expected to decline the offer of membership, the soft power of the blocs may also be in question. For BRICS to truly replace the G7 as the leader in global trade and politics, it must ensure that it is united, as inconsistent objectives will undermine any efforts they make. With this small kind of intro or setting the tone, I will of course go now to the esteemed panelists who have been invited by Center for Governance Studies, and thank you very much for accepting, rather while I am moderating on behalf of Center for Governance Studies, on behalf of myself also, for agreeing to discuss on this very important topic, as I have mentioned that just before this kind of to set the tone. So may I, and I have got in the esteemed panel Mr. Andre de Melo de Isuza, tenured researcher for policy analyst, Institute for Applied Economic Research, Brazil. Ashok Sajjanhar, former ambassador, Institute of Global Studies, President, India. Then followed by Mr. David Morris, Senior Fellow, Center for China and Globalization, Australia, who would be focusing more on China and the possible power of renminbi as a well-traded currency in the global marketplaces. Dominic Rakoto Jeffy, former Minister of Defense, Madagascar, Faris Hedrovic, Business Development and Government Relations Expert, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So all of them are present here. Once again, thank you so much. So of course, everyone can come up with their own opinion, but to set the tone and make ourselves quarantine or softly quarantine within the planned time limit. So I will be posing each one of them one question and to set the tone, and then we will again expect that if the time permits, come up with the second question for them, and also try to accommodate one or two questions from the august audience also. So where we go, starting with Mr. Andre Di Mello Isuza, what the question would be, why are China and India's economic objectives different? Will they ever unite in the future to ensure there is a possible BRICS dominance or BRICS currency dominance? Thank you.
Many thanks, Chair, and many thanks to the Center for Governance Studies for the invitation to participate in this event. Let me just see if I got the question right. So the question is, will China and India join forces to try to mitigate reliance on the dollar? Was that the question, Chair? Yes? Well, I obviously can't speak for these countries, but from what we've seen in BRICS negotiation, there certainly has been a willingness to try to reduce reliance on the US dollar, right? And the global dominance of the dollar as a currency of reserve clearly gives the United States some very important advantages, both economically and geopolitically. Well, economically, not just the US government, but also households and firms from the US are able to borrow more than they would be able to do so otherwise. And so they can sustain large deficits and expenditures, including, mind you, on their own military, because in practice, they are being financed by the rest of the world. Right? So the US deficit is financed by other countries which keep US-based assets. Now, this is also a geopolitical advantage because, as we have seen, at least in the last 10 years, the US has used the global dominance of the dollar to impose sanctions on countries such as Afghanistan, Iran, Venezuela, and more recently, Russia. Actually, given the size of the Russian economy and given the multilateral nature of the sanctions that have been imposed, I would argue that Russia is an unprecedented case, and actually it's on a distinct level, if you will, of geopolitical sanctions. And so many countries are not happy with the dominance of the dollar precisely for these reasons. And these include the BRICS, which, mind you, originally was not an anti-American bloc. You can say it was anti-hegemonic, if you will, but not particularly anti-American. But now, with rising tensions between the United States and China, with increasing securitization of economic flows, including not just finance, but trade and others, and other political agendas as well, the BRICS may be adopting an increased anti-American stance, or at least that is the fear that comes from latest development. As you should know, during the last summit that took place earlier this year in Johannesburg, South Africa, there was a decision to expand the BRICS with 6 new members, 3 of which are oil-producing and oil-exporting countries, namely Saudi Arabia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates. Now, there has already been a process of de-dollarization in oil markets, but the proposal that was put forth by the BRICS is to have trade in oil and in other goods as well, but oil is a very important commodity, as you know, in currencies other than the dollar. And actually, the Brazilian president has even spoken about a BRICS currency, which I think is something still very far-fetched. We can't see it coming in the short term, but it is possible to have a greater de-dollarization, and again, particularly in the oil market, given that the new BRICS blocks with the new members will concentrate most of the countries that produce and export oil. Right? So this might take place. And so if we're thinking about de-dollarization, we have to think which currency will take place of the dollar, or at least expand its role as a foreign reserve globally. And the most important candidate clearly is the renminbi of China. Right? And China has been seeking to increase the status of its own currency for some time now. But that's not very easily done. First, because the Chinese system of payments is undeveloped, and secondly, because there's still very strong restrictions in China for inbound and outbound capital flows as well. So if the renminbi is eventually to play a greater role as a reserve currency, which nowadays, by the way, accounts to about 2.5%, so it's still very low, let alone replace the dollar as the main currency of reserve, then it would need to relax these restrictions, and it would need to develop its own system of payments. And we don't see that coming, at least not in the short term. So it might happen. Actually, the new and expanded BRICS might present a blow to the dollar, if you will, but the dollar will not lose its status, at least in the short term, and if it does so eventually, this will take place gradually over time. Now, I would also argue that the expansion of the BRICS, on the other hand, if it does strengthen its role in oil markets and oil trade, and poses a challenge to U.S. influence, particularly in the Middle East, and if you think about it, all the new members are in the Middle East or in neighboring regions of the Middle East, with the sole exception of Argentina, which we don't even know if it's actually going to join. It depends on the elections that will take place soon, very shortly, later this month. But anyway, it will be a lot harder for the BRICS to make common decisions and to have joint actions in the international political and economic agenda, I would argue. It was already very difficult to begin with because these are countries that are very different and that have very distinct interests and views and objectives. But on one particular issue area, which was the main reason for being of the BRICS, which was precisely international financial institutions, they did manage to achieve, to create the new development bank, the contingent reserve arrangement, which, by the way, is something that goes far beyond anything that the G7 has ever done. But it was specific to this issue area. And again, at the time, there were 4, and later 4 countries joined by South Africa in 2010. But now, there are 11 countries. And that poses considerable collective action problems to make any joint position in international governance negotiations and to achieve things like a new currency, if you will, or a common position for de-dollarization. I think it will become much difficult, and I fear that the BRICS might end up becoming weaker and perhaps even irrelevant as a result of this choice, which was clearly driven by China, again, to try to reduce the influence of the US in the Middle East. My government, the Brazilian government, was opposed. India was also opposed. But in the end, the Chinese position prevailed. And I'll stop here. Thank you.
Brazil, and Brazil is a member of the, of course, BRIC, original BRIC, as BRICS, and then now the expanded BRICS. Thank you very much. And as we all have heard him, that the biggest challenge for the BRICS and the reorganized BRICS countries would be driving towards a common agenda and a common vision. So may I now go to Mr. Ashok Sajjan Har, former Ambassador, Institute of Global Studies, President, India. And my humble question, not necessarily he must be quarantined to totally. Can you elaborate on the impacts of de-dollarization for business and people? Are there any harms for neutral countries or small countries, and especially now the new member countries that Mr. Andre Di Mello has focused on, like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, and Ethiopia? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the floor. Since this is the first time that I take the floor on this particular platform, let me also add my words of gratitude and appreciation to the Center for Governance Studies for organizing this Bay of Bengal Conversations and getting us all together here in this beautiful city on this beautiful venue. My particular appreciation to the chairman, Dr. Manzoor Chowdhury, and also to the executive director, Dr. Zillur Rahman, for the hard work that they have done and the initiative they have taken. Now, the question, Mr. Chairman, that you have asked is in terms of de-dollarization and its impact on private business. Let me put it this way. I think we need to differentiate between what we mean by de-dollarization, and we are mentioning also a new common BRICS currency in the same breath. I think these are two very different concepts, and right at the beginning, we should be quite mindful of that. I think we also need to be mindful of the fact that BRIC, the four countries when they started. In fact, when this idea was given by Jim O'Neill in 2001, it was basically that these countries, large population, large economies, would play a very significant role in seeking a better deal and a greater influence in the Western-dominated financial and economic architecture. It was never in an anti-Western stance or anti-Western position that BRICS were to take. BRICS were getting together so that they could have a much better negotiating position when they are talking to the whether it's to the World Bank or to the IMF, getting a better deal for themselves. And I think that has not changed in my view. Although, recent developments have shown that there is a very deep polarization between China and the United States because of trade and technology matters, and there is a huge divide between the United States and the West and Russia on geopolitical issues. So that definitely is a reality that we have to take cognizance of. But that having been said, I think BRICS was never intended to be an anti-Western construct. It might be a non-Western construct, but it was never intended to be an anti-Western construct. And if I think there is some thinking in certain quarters that the expansion would drive the BRICS to take a more pronounced anti-Western stand, I think I would have difficulty. I would doubt that very much. Because as the previous panelist said, even in the BRICS 5 as they exist, I don't think there is definitely not a consensus, but not also an agreement that we should take this, this body, this organization into an anti-Western position, because in that case, whatever its potential is to voice the concerns and the aspirations of the emerging markets of the global south, I think that will be seriously compromised. Because if you look at the new additions to the BRICS, the 6 countries that have come together, I think barring Iran, I don't think any of the other countries, whether it is Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, it is Argentina, etc., I don't think any one of them would want to take a pronouncedly anti-Western stand. I think basically the idea there is when you want to expand,
you want to hedge your bets, particularly when you see that there has been so much of turmoil, there have been so many sanctions. So I think countries are wanting to hedge their bets. And this is quite visible in, if we talk about, let us say, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, I think we need to take also cognizance of the fact that very recently we have had this I2U2 arrangement between India, UAE, Israel, and the United States. Very recently, on the sidelines of the G20, we had the very ambitious India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor that has been put into place. And that is with the very active cooperation and collaboration of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Of course, Israel, Jordan, India, etc., and Europe, we get together. The point I'm making is that we would be making a very serious mistake if we think that it is an anti-Western institution that we are trying to create. Second point on this whole issue of de-dollarization, this is not a new idea. I have been following the BRICS summits for many years now. In fact, there are other organizations also. For instance, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. We have been talking in the SCO also to have more trade in our national currencies. And that is a move that has been expanding, that has been growing. I think the new membership of these 6 countries, as far as BRICS is concerned, it will provide more heft and more traction to this organization. But I don't think that it will give a very strong push in terms of de-dollarization or coming up with a new BRICS currency. Let me just give 1 or 2 figures. One is the BRICS 5 as it existed. It accounted for, of course, about 42% of the global population, but it accounted for about 26% of the global GDP. With the additionality of 6 more members, the GDP increases from about 26% to 29%. As against that, if you look at G7, it still commands about 43% of the global GDP. I'm talking about nominal terms, I'm not talking about the purchasing power parity term, because there the situation is quite different. So I think this movement towards trading in non-dollar currencies, that is going to go forward, that is going to increase. But I think if the BRICS stays on its chartered path, that is to provide a greater say and a better deal for the developing countries, it has a good future. If it projects itself and paints itself, which I do not think it is going to do, in an anti-Western position, then I think it will be doing a great disservice to itself and also to the countries of the global south who have come together. So I would say it has great potential. And if there is de-dollarization, Mr. Chair, as you asked, I think it is in terms of greater trading in national currencies, I think this has the potential to provide an impetus and a boost to the domestic economies of these countries. And that is why individually these countries are going on that path. I could mention the large number of countries with which India has signed these agreements to have trading in national currencies. And that is proceeding well. I think it gives a greater comfort level. There is greater uncertainty because there's, when you look at the foreign exchange volatility, that of course has an impact on trade and on private businesses also. And when you are trading in your national currencies, then that uncertainty is considerably reduced. So I would say that, even today, dollar accounts for 90% of the global trade, irrespective of what you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, that about $500 billion of the assets in China have been de-dollarized or whatever. I think 90% of trade is still in dollars, and more than 60% of the global assets are still held in dollars. So I think we need to be realistic on this account, that these are small steps, but these are important steps. I don't think we will, no one is working towards having a new BRICS currency, so to say, although I know that the Brazilian president had proposed this last year, because I think there are too many power asymmetries and also the dynamism between the members of the BRICS is very complex. So I think there are obstacles and there are challenges, but BRICS will be able to fulfill its objective if we are able to get greater cohesiveness and greater coherence as far as the working of the processes of the BRICS countries.
Thank you so much,
Thank you very much.
Ambassador Sajjanhar. He has brought in, ladies and gentlemen, something new and positive vibe that BRICS is not a anti-Western bloc kind of platform. And number two, what has really intrigued me at least, that yes, more cohesiveness within the BRICS nations. And number three, he also has brought up the spirit of global south. So these are three issues to take forward, I would guess. But again, for the interest of time, especially not to stand fast or steadfastly stand up between the lunch and the this dialogue. So I would request each of our esteemed panelists to be very judicious to the time management. So ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to come to Mr. David Morris from Australia, Senior Fellow, Center for China and Globalization. And my humble question or observation to elaborate for Mr. David Morris would be, how do you think inclusion of the new member countries would help BRICS? Mr. David Morris, please.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for that question. I'm going to make a few general comments first, if I might, and firstly, I must express my gratitude to the Centre for Governance Studies. And you know, everything we're talking about is about governance, because governance is about leadership and institutions. And leaders change, as we know. Institutions tend to endure. Institutions sometimes need to be reformed, but they tend to endure. So we can predict some things about the future, and we can predict that institutions will tend to endure and be reformed, but we cannot predict leadership. It's not easy to do. So leadership can change as events can change. I know from my experience as someone who's worked in government and in diplomacy, when leaders change, everything changes. Leaders play such an important role in setting the tone, in determining the priorities, and in framing the issues and the challenges of the day. And so these questions around world order, around the financial architecture, around new regional groupings, these are questions about the leaders of the day. They're also questions about the long-term institutions that either already exist or new ones that are being formed. And so when it comes to this question of the dollar and the question of BRICS, I would make some observations. And the first observation about the enduring leadership for many decades of the United States. I think it's actually unhelpful for us to think about a unipolar moment. I think that phrase has distracted us from understanding that actually amongst the market economies of the world, that's been an awfully long unipolar moment. It's actually been since the end of the Second World War that the United States has essentially determined the institutions and the practices of the not just the international financial system, but the international system as a whole. The United States was the prevailing power after the destruction and disaster of the Second World War. The United States dominated the global economy, and it was in a position to draw on its better angels and its optimism about the world to work with other victorious powers after the Second World War to create the international system, to create the United Nations and all of the institutions of the multilateral system. And for better or worse, we all know they don't work as well as they were designed to, and we all know that's partly because of the great powers, the US included. But I think it's important for us to understand that we are talking about a long-term process here of institutions that were determined in the post-war era, not least the international financial institutions, those Bretton Woods institutions, the dominance of the dollar that has been supported by those international institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, etc. This goes back a long way. So it's not a recent thing, and it's not something that's going to change quickly. We've heard that the US dollar remains the predominant currency of use in the world. It remains the currency for trade and for foreign reserves all around the world. And I think it's highly unlikely that's going to change quickly. Having said that, there are underlying these long-term trends of how institutions tend to endure. There are changes in leadership, and one of the changes that we're undergoing, this great uncertainty that we're all trying to grapple with, is that actually that position that the United States has been in of the really the preeminent power in the world, that is changing, that is now in question, because even if it's only a relative shift in power, there is no doubt that China is now a peer competitor in a way that the Soviet Union never was. The Soviet Union ran its own closed shop, its own Comecon system of planned economies that completely failed, and it's why the whole world has adopted, to some extent, elements of the market approach to running economies because of the failure of the Soviet bloc. And the best example of that is China. China in 1979 abandoned the Soviet-led model of central planning and adopted a marketized approach, a more market-led approach. And the success of China, followed by, you'd have to say, most of the countries of East and South Asia and developing countries around the world that have followed this model, pioneered before China by Hong Kong and Singapore and Taiwan and others. This model of a market-led approach has been enormously successful, but it's been based in the global trade and the value chains that have been developed, the global value chains. It's been based still on the US dollar. So Chinese trade is still predominantly by US dollar. But the leadership's shifting. So if the leadership is shifting, what is the leadership doing? So if there's a new rival leader to the United States, and if that is China, and I say if, because I want to pose a second suggestion here, and that is that it may not be a binary. It may not be a question of one or the other. It's in fact, as I think we've heard from many speakers throughout the last couple of days, probably much more likely, and we don't know for sure, but it's probably much more likely that we're entering into a period of multiple players. Not a multipolar world, because poles tend to imply that these poles are attracting followers. I don't think that's necessarily the way it's going to work, and I think BRICS is a good example of this, that it's perhaps more likely that we're going to see a multiplex of many players, many of them with significant amounts of power, India being one and Brazil being another, but there are many other examples of significant economies and significant powers that may well, in this transition phase and perhaps in whatever new world order emerges, may find that they have coalitions of interest around specific issues. They may ally on security grounds in some directions, they may work on economic grounds in others, and they'll be pulled and they'll be pushed by big powers, but just how it will all settle down and how it will sort out may not be a binary. It may not be between two sides. And I think the question of the financial system is a good example of this, because if China is a rival to replace the United States as some global hegemon, then it would be madly trying to to undermine the US dollar, and it would be trying to use the renminbi as a new global currency. And I don't think there's much evidence for that, actually. I think what we've seen instead is that actually China, as it's been engaging in new institution building, is certainly looking to do more bilateral trade with its own currency, but at the same time it's building institutions that are still embedding the US dollar dominance. So for example, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which China created as a new institution for multilateral infrastructure lending. Now, why did China do this? Well, there was a gap in the market because the Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF, the World Bank, had taken a position for a couple of decades that they were not lending for infrastructure. And the developing world, as we know, countries like Bangladesh, were desperately in need of infrastructure. And the growth of Asia in particular was leading to this massive infrastructure deficit. The Japanese-led Asian Development Bank was addressing this issue, but the big international financial institutions dominated by the US and by Europe, the IMF and World Bank, were not addressing this need. So China came in and established quite a large new international institution, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. But what currency did it use? It uses the US dollar. And this institution, $100 billion US dollar institution, is not about setting up one block of countries against the West. It's actually, look at its membership. Look at the membership of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. It includes my home country, it includes Australia, it includes France, it includes Germany, it includes India, it includes Indonesia. This is an inclusive multilateral institution that has been created, and I suggest will endure, because it's been created to address a need in the international system and in the international financial system based on the prevailing US dollar and based on addressing some existing problems with the previous institutions. Now, is it a challenge in the way that the BRICS is depicted as a challenge to the West? Well, I'll say one more thing about the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. In a sense,
Maurice,
it is a challenge.
if you could be brief,
yeah,
little bit, finish up.
I'll come to the end now. In a sense, it is, but it's an important point because the design of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank as one of these new institutions deliberately gives a majority role to the developing world. So in that sense, it's a huge challenge to the World Bank and the IMF. It is led by a developing country. It is led by China. It's the first multilateral financial institution to be led by a developing country. And it does not impose standards based on political views in the way that the IMF and World Bank impose conditions, political conditions, such as democracy and human rights, which are strongly held views in Western countries, but this is a huge challenge from the AIIB to that prevailing Western view. So yes, BRICS in that context is perceived, like the rise of China, is perceived as some threat to dollar dominance to the US. I wanted to throw out some interesting different observations there that perhaps it's a bit more complicated than that. Perhaps actually what we're seeing is countries that are developing, but are developing seeking to reform rather than to overthrow the international system.
Thank you so much, Mr. Maurice. He has brought in, ladies and gentlemen, again some new dimensions, that role being played by the international big or large financial institutions, including the Bretton Woods institutions like World Bank, IMF and Asian Development Bank. Yes, and also the rivalry, the age-old rivalry between China and US, and now with Taiwan on one corner and India on the other corner, how does it evolve in the coming days also, with an eye being kept on, constant eye being kept on the Ukraine-Russia war, and how the developed countries in Europe, they are also linking with and becoming closer to US in driving, also indirectly propping up the support for US dollar dominance maybe. Thank you so much, Mr. Maurice. So may I now come to Mr. Dominic Rakoto Jeffy, former Minister of Defense for Madagascar, and my question to him would be, why is the G7 more united than the BRICS nations? Are they more effective in your opinion? Again, reiterating, why is the G7 countries or bloc more united than the BRICS countries or nations? Are they more effective in your opinion? If you could be very brief, Mr. Dominic.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the Center for Governance Studies for inviting me to exchange views on this important topic today. To start with, I'm not a finance specialist or an economist, but I'll try to give my point of view on this. Let me put it the other way around. Back in post-World War II, the UN and IMF and World Bank were set up to guarantee peace and security. IMF and World Bank were just set up to finance the reconstruction because it was the bank for international bank for reconstruction and development of devastated Europe. At that time, African states did not exist because they were independent, most of them only after the 1960s. So the world order at that time does not match anymore the current world order. What I see is that dollar is just a tool, it's an instrument of payment. But the most important thing is the mindset behind that. If the structure and the processes in the world order do not change, it is, I think, it's just a waste of time. Maybe step by step, but it will take very long time to change it. From my point of view, because I'm from Africa, Madagascar is a big island off the eastern coast of Africa. We have quite some difficulties, especially, for example, during the vote at the General Assembly, whether we should be with Ukraine or Russia. There was pressure on the countries who were dependent on the IMF and World Bank financing system to cast vote for the Western side. So it's a good idea in this multipolar system now to have another grouping, but for our point of view from Africa, it's rather difficult to have benefits, direct benefits from it, because we are not really part of the system up till now. It's just South Africa, which is a member of the BRICS, even after the expansion of the BRICS. I think that this would be more, what would they say, fruitful if there is a consensus, large consensus on how the world system would be set up. But the effectiveness of the expanded BRICS, yeah, I would say that. But we still focus on the petrodollar, the fossil energy, whereas we are talking about climate change, global warming, green energy, and that makes me up sometimes what do we really need at the end. So this is only my point of view. Since I'm not expert in that, I prefer to stay at that stage first. Thank you.
He has brought in again new kind of issues like energy security, fossil fuel, how green energy, green manufacturing, green environment, all these issues, and how are these two groups of nations or blocks of nations are going to address. These are also becoming very important issues going forward. Now I am coming with the possibly the simplest question for Mr. Faris Hadrovic from Bosnia-Herzegovina. As you would be knowing, Mr. Hadrovic, that yes, technology is becoming very important, either aggregator or divider in this world. So while we are talking of two interesting blocks like G7 and vis-a-vis against BRICS or expanded BRICS, that yes, how do you see the recent rise in AI and generative technologies? What with this kind of recent rise in AI and generative technologies, what do you think the impact on BRICS nations will be, given that technological development is based in USA and Europe, and the BRICS nations are more focused on manufacturing? Will this help G7 nations more in the ultimate competition or elbowing out each other, or in the words of the ambassador Shajanhar, that he has more upholding the interest of the global south? Thank you so much. Again, role of technological development and the BRICS and G7 blocking out with each other.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The simplest question seems to be the most complex one for the end. I would just like to just give a few thoughts before moving on to the technological aspect, which I think is very interesting and fascinating. It is I think a separate section on its own. But just to touch upon some of the points that some of my colleagues have already discussed, I think that there is, talking about de-dollarization and BRICS, I think is premature at this particular stage, in my humble opinion. There's no universal agreement on, within the BRICS, on setting that as part of the agenda. I think we've seen clear signals from Russia for obvious reasons, China as well, but there isn't agreement within the bloc or grouping itself, and it'll be more complex as the group expands. It was rightly stated that the dollar still is about 90% of world trade, and it would take many, many more world economic actors to dethrone the dollar in the future. And that's a complex debate by itself. The rise of alternative currencies does not seem to threaten the dollar, but seems to be giving competition more amongst the regional currencies that are part of it. Now, from the technological perspective, I think you've mentioned generative AI. I think there's an important, and I think that's something we haven't touched upon here, and development which has been going on for the past decade, and that's the rise in blockchain technology and cryptocurrencies. Now, you might know that several countries around the world have already started discussing the creation of central bank digital currencies, as they're called, as a response to the rise in cryptocurrencies led by Bitcoin and similar currencies. And some of the countries, the United States has been somewhat lagging in terms of its regulatory development. Some other countries have jumped onto the bandwagon and are developing their regulatory environments much quicker and are moving into the development of their own digital currencies. You might have noticed that recently the European Central Bank has signaled that even though it was opposed to digital currencies, has now firmly stated that it's developing its own central currency digital currency and is already starting to limit the use of cash for payments. Now, adopting blockchain, you're adopting transparent mechanisms as well. And the BRICS nations have the opportunity to dramatically increase their trust in their financial systems. The implementation of blockchain's so-called smart contracts in international trade agreements and amongst BRICS nations potentially may diminish the reliance on the dollar-based system. While the US is not left behind in harnessing blockchain, the race is to see which nation or alliance of nations can fully integrate this technology to modernize and secure trade first. I believe that we've seen many countries, including BRICS nations, harnessing generative AI, in particular for analytical purposes and to sift through vast economic data, resulting in more informed strategic decisions. That'll hopefully create a ripple effect, and more countries will start adopting technologies and increase also financial stability with particularly embracing blockchain technologies. Now, the strength of the US dollar is intrinsically tied to the perceived security of the US dollar, and the BRICS nations perhaps can fortify their financial infrastructure with blockchain, as I've said. And I think we're running out of time. It's a complex topic. I have many more points I can make, but I think for the start, these will be it.
Thank you so much. Yes, it was not as simple as one would have deemed. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got around 5+ minutes left before we head on for lunch. So at this point in time, I would like to open the floor, but please do justice to the time for all, 5 minutes. So anybody asking only question, no opinion, no passing of remarks, only question to any of the esteemed panelists present here. Question must be contained within 1 minute, and answer, I am afraid, also must be contained within 1 minute. Thank you so much. If you could raise your hand, I can take 3 questions only. 3 questions, in fact. Please. Yes, I can see General Amsa Amin, very eloquent general from Bangladesh Army, retired though now. We are losing time, please. We have already lost 12 seconds.
About dollarization, de-dollarization, and BRICS itself sounds rather I should say anti-peace, anti-peaceful coexistence, and it relates to economic warfare. We're already suffering, and you suffer more. I want opinions about this, and what is the alternative to all this? We had ADB, we have World Bank, we have now another AIIB. Aren't they going to complicate the issues? And more so, last point, critical point, I got this keyword, volatile Indo-Pacific. We don't want to be volatile in Indo-Pacific. We want peace between China, India, US.
Sir, your question, please.
This is the question. Why go for this?
Ambassador Sadanhar, may I request you to answer General Amsa Amin?
Yeah. Paradigm shift in this thinking process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very quickly, let me respond. One is Sir, you mentioned there are so many other banks, etc. I think basically they are to create infrastructure in the world. There is a huge deficit of infrastructure. So the more banks that we are able to have, whether it is the New Development Bank, AIIB, ADB, we have found that the already existing banks have really not been able to complete the task to fulfill the objective that they have met. So I think these new banks that are coming up, of course, there should be due diligence, financial integrity should be maintained, but I think that is the purpose. Otherwise, if the banks don't lend for infrastructure, then private individuals and countries might come and they might have very adverse terms and conditions that are imposed. The second question that you mentioned is that this is all war. I would not tend to agree with you. I think this is a way to cooperate, to collaborate. And that is why I mentioned, sir, that there should be cohesiveness and coherence in these organizations. They will be able to identify the interests of the developing countries of the global south and be able to negotiate with the partners in G7. Their groupings like BRICS, G7, G20, they all have a very important role to play. They should not be pitted against each other, but they should try to work along with each other.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Sajjanhar. I can only, ladies and gentlemen, take another question, only one question, specific to do justice to time, more to do justice to the hungry tummies. Thank you so much. One question only.
I have a question. Yeah, I'm Rezai from ISEC in Bangladesh. So I'm so excited to know about a fact.
Very brief, sir.
Yeah, just
please.
Okay. Just a specific question is like, will BRIC reduce dominance of the dollar in the future, in the near future? If yes, then what should we do as a developing country, as a small developing country like Bangladesh? So what's your observation?
Thank you so much. Mr. Morris, can I request you to take that question, please? And very brief, of course.
I think my brief answer to you is that the dollar is not losing its dominance in the near future. It is gradually losing its almost total dominance of the past, there's no doubt, and there are other currencies available for reserves and for trade. But I think in terms of Bangladesh, I would suggest the US dollar is still likely to be the currency for some time for international purposes.
Thank you so much to all questioning people and individuals, and more importantly, our esteemed panelists. I'm very sorry, I know this is a very important topic with this, especially with the recent expansion of BRICS and China, India, China, US, further polarization, and more so, say NATO becoming again reorganized because of this Ukraine-Russia war. All this de-dollarization, G7 dominance, BRICS expansion have become very important topic to discuss, topic to understand, topic to appreciate. For the interest of time, we could not elaborate much, but again, I think most of the panelists, in fact all the panelists, did try to do their best kind of justice to the topic that has been put up for us today. I would like to once again thank all the esteemed panelists, and more importantly, the organizer, not only for inviting us here, more so for picking up a very important topic to discuss and putting up on the table for us to discuss. Thank you once again. I guess lunch is waiting for all of us, if not each one of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all our speakers and our moderator for their insight thoughts and a wonderful discussion. I would like to request you all to stand up and get in front of the stage for a group photo. Thank you. And the lunch is served by the foyer and the ballroom.